The galaxy fell into a strange, cold silence the moment the enemy fleet arrived. On the edge of the solar system, space rippled with light as thousands of alien warships came out of warp. They were so many that the stars behind them disappeared, covered by the shadows of their giant metal bodies. It was like a storm of steel and fire waiting to strike. On Earth, every radar screamed red. Satellites locked onto the invading fleet. Within seconds, news spread around the world. People stopped what they were doing and stared at the skies. Governments froze. No one expected it to happen this fast. The aliens had arrived, not for talks, not for peace, but to crush Earth completely. In the Terran Defense Command, buried deep beneath a mountain range, officers and generals stood in silence as the giant holographic screen filled the room with the image of the fleet. It was a wall of warships, perfectly aligned, perfectly still, a storm waiting to fall. Their ships were unlike anything Earth had ever seen up close. Long black spikes, glowing red engines, sharp wings like blades meant to cut the stars. They looked like predators. Then the sound came. A cold, robotic voice echoed through every human transmission channel. "Surrender," it said. "Surrender or be erased." The same message repeated again and again, in every language, every frequency. It was not a negotiation. It was a warning. All across Earth, people stared at the message. Cities dimmed their lights. The world seemed to hold its breath. Some people prayed. Others clenched their fists. But one thing became clear inside the Terran Command Center. Humanity would not kneel. In the silence of the war room, the commander slowly stepped forward. His voice was calm, but it carried steel. "Wake them up," he said. At first, no one moved. Then the operators began typing. One by one, locked systems came to life. In the deep oceans, miles under the surface, heavy metal doors began to open. Old war machines that had slept for decades started to breathe again. Submerged launch bays filled with dark water lit up with bright blue light. Gigantic warships, black as night, began to rise slowly from the deep. Their hulls were made for silence, built for a war humanity hoped would never come. But it had come now. The water boiled around their engines as the sleeping giants returned to the surface. In underground hangars, far below mountains and deserts, other ships were waking up too. Crews ran to their stations. Red lights flashed through the halls. There were no speeches. No one needed a speech. Every soldier knew what this meant. If Earth fell, humanity would vanish. There would be no second chance. High above, stealth satellites turned toward the incoming fleet. Automated turrets powered up. The black fleet of Earth, silent, deadly, and patient, rose from its hiding places like wolves coming out of the dark. The alien fleet began to move closer. Their formations were clean, cold, and perfect, like a blade sliding toward its target. They thought Earth was a soft target, a weak world that only looked dangerous from a distance. They didn't see the fire waiting for them. They didn't see the traps hidden in the shadows. They thought they were the hunters. They had no idea they had walked into a den full of wolves. Inside one of the Terran Command bunkers, a young radar officer whispered under his breath, "They don't know." His senior officer didn't respond. His eyes stayed on the glowing red line showing the enemy's advance. The fleet was only hours away. But humanity was ready. For years, Earth had been preparing silently, building ships in secret, training soldiers, hiding weapons in places no one could imagine. It wasn't arrogance. It was survival. Far out in the Kuiper Belt, hidden among the rocks, cloaked Terran defense stations came online. Massive cannons rotated silently. Drones launched into space without a single sound. Invisible eyes locked onto the alien fleet. The enemy still didn't notice. They kept moving like kings, believing Earth would be on its knees before their arrival. On the surface, people gathered on rooftops, staring at the night sky. They couldn't see the fleet, but they could feel something. The air was different. Quiet. Heavy. Somewhere deep inside, every human heart shared the same thought. This was it. The moment humanity either broke, or burned bright enough to make the stars remember their name. In orbit, Earth's first line of defense stood ready. Not a single Terran ship moved yet. Not a single signal was sent back to the invaders. There were no cries, no negotiations. Only silence. It was a dangerous silence, the kind that wrapped around your neck and squeezed slowly. The alien commanders laughed, thinking it meant fear. They didn't understand that humanity's silence was not fear. It was a promise. In the Terran command room, the commander placed his hand on the control panel. All around him, officers straightened their backs. This was no ordinary battle. This was survival. This was the moment the galaxy would learn that Earth does not bow. The commander whispered something only his closest officers could hear. Let them come closer. His voice was calm. It was the calm of a storm right before it breaks everything apart. The alien broadcast played one last time, surrender or be erased. And then, for the first time, Earth answered, not with words, but with the soft growl of engines awakening all across the planet. Ships rose from the sea like shadows taking shape. Satellites shimmered as stealth fields dropped. The wolves had opened their eyes. The alien fleet still thought they were hunters. But at that very moment, they were already trapped. They just didn't know it yet. Space itself seemed to tighten around them. Earth had waited for this war. And now the war had arrived. The galaxy held its breath. The stars burned quietly. And humanity prepared to strike back. The alien fleet made the first move, just as everyone in the Terran command expected. One of their colossal warships, its hull glowing with crimson light, moved forward like a predator ready to rip its prey apart. Then came the flash. A single beam of burning energy shot out from the alien flagship and crossed the void in seconds. It slammed into Earth's outer defense station orbiting far beyond the moon, a massive structure built to track enemy movements. The station didn't even get the chance to raise its shields. In one blinding second, the structure broke apart, melting into a cloud of silent debris. 1 billion people on Earth watched it happen live. Screens everywhere showed the burning wreckage spinning in the darkness. For the first time, a piece of Earth had fallen. But what followed was not fear. It was something else. Something far more dangerous. In the Terran Defense Command, alarms rang across every level. Officers shouted coordinates and velocity data. Soldiers ran through the control decks. But the commander didn't shout. He stood still, his eyes locked on the screen. The aliens had fired first. That was all he needed. Authorization, he said in a low, sharp voice. Level Omega. Those words changed everything. Dozens of locks released on terminals across the planet. All secret war protocols were now active. Humanity was no longer waiting. Humanity was striking back. On the dark side of the moon, a black warship named Eclipse floated silently, hidden behind a layer of electromagnetic fog. It had no lights, no radio signals, no visible heat. The alien fleet didn't even know it existed. When the order came through, the Eclipse powered up. Its engines remained silent, but inside, its weapons came alive. Crew members strapped themselves into their chairs, screens glowing blue in the dark bridge. No one spoke. They didn't need to. They had trained their whole lives for this moment. The ship's main weapon, a long, slender cannon known as the Dark Spear, rotated toward the nearest alien cruiser. The alien ship was massive, covered in armor, its shields pulsing like blood. It was designed to destroy entire cities in a single shot. But the Eclipse was built to do one thing: erase threats before they even understood what hit them. The commander of the Eclipse gave a single nod. The weapon fired. No light came out. No sound. Just a line of death cutting through space. In less than a second, the alien cruiser cracked open down the middle like glass. Its engine core flared once, then it exploded silently, lighting up the void like a dying star. 2 other ships behind it were caught in the blast and shattered before they could react. Back in the alien flagship, chaos broke out. Officers barked in their strange language, scrambling to understand what happened. Their sensors didn't even detect the shot. They called it luck. They told themselves Earth got one lucky strike. But they didn't know. Humanity didn't believe in luck. Humanity built this moment piece by piece, year after year, for this exact day. In orbit above Mars, hidden bunkers opened like the jaws of a beast. Old rail cannons the size of skyscrapers turned to face the alien fleet. They had been built decades ago, buried beneath the red soil, silent until now. At the same time, automated drone carriers rose from the Martian surface and disappeared into stealth formations. Thousands of tiny, fast-moving drones spread like a black cloud toward the enemy lines. The alien fleet advanced, still confident in their numbers. Thousands of ships. Hundreds of carriers. Their commanders believed Earth was throwing sticks at a storm. They thought they would crush any resistance easily. They were wrong. In the cold shadows of deep space, more Terran warships uncloaked. Each one had been hidden in dead zones behind asteroids, their engines cold, their hulls coated in radar-bending layers. The moment Earth activated Omega Protocol, they came alive. One by one, their engines burned bright blue as they slipped into battle formations. In the command room, the main screen split into dozens of feeds. Every hidden station, every warship, every orbital defense system began transmitting real-time data. The commander's voice echoed through the speakers. They've made their move. Now we make ours. Human fleets started moving. Not in panic, not in a rush, but with perfect precision. They didn't charge blindly. They waited for the aliens to push forward, letting them stretch their lines thin. The first human strike wasn't about destroying them all. It was about showing them something they had never felt before. Fear. In the alien fleet's second wave, more ships pushed ahead to cover the hole left by the destroyed cruiser. The aliens still believed it was luck. They tightened their formation, unaware that hundreds of Terran cannons had already locked onto them. Then it happened. A coordinated volley from the hidden orbital cannons struck their formation like lightning from nowhere. Dozens of alien warships exploded in perfect rhythm, one after another, their destruction lighting the dark space between Earth and the fleet. Their shields failed faster than they could recharge. The alien admiral slammed his fist against the console. Their fleet had never faced resistance like this. Every calculation, every plan they made assumed Earth would crumble at the first strike. Instead, they were bleeding before the real war had even begun. On Earth, people watched the explosions in silence. They saw the first spark of hope in the darkness. For the first time, the galaxy would learn what Earth had been preparing for. Across the planet, military bases launched more warships. Massive carriers rose into the night sky like towers of steel. Pilots jumped into their cockpits. Drones formed perfect swarms above the atmosphere. The full power of humanity was now awake. In orbit, the Eclipse vanished back into its electromagnetic fog. Another Terran warship replaced it in the firing position. The aliens scanned space wildly, firing blindly into the dark, but they couldn't find anything. It was like trying to fight a shadow with bare hands. The alien admiral's voice boomed across the fleet, demanding full assault. But already, they were at a disadvantage. Humanity had drawn first blood. Humanity had broken their perfect wall. They were no longer the hunters. In the command center, the commander's face remained calm. He watched the alien fleet shift nervously and whispered to his officers, "They don't know how deep this goes." Not yet. The operators smiled faintly. The trap was only beginning to close. Above Earth, thousands of warships lit up the darkness. Drones moved like a living tide. Cannons turned. Shields hardened. Humanity had been silent for a long time, but now the silence had ended. The war for Earth had begun, and the galaxy was about to learn why no one should ever try to crush the home of humankind. The alien fleet thought this was the opening of their victory, but in truth, it was the beginning of their end. They just didn't see it yet. Space was turning against them. The wolves were no longer hiding. They were circling their prey. And soon, they would strike again. The alien fleet kept advancing, their confidence unshaken by the first strike. They believed their numbers were too overwhelming for a single planet to resist. Their ships moved like a tidal wave of metal, blotting out the stars. Each vessel carried enough firepower to erase entire cities. Their admirals believed they were closing in for an easy kill. What they didn't realize was that with every kilometer they moved closer, They were sinking deeper into a trap humanity had spent a century building. It was a trap designed not to just stop them, but to erase them completely. In the Terran Command Center, the atmosphere shifted from tense to razor-sharp. No one was afraid anymore. Fear had burned away the moment the first alien cruiser exploded. Now, there was only focus. Operators stared at glowing blue screens filled with enemy positions. Every ship in the alien Armada was being tracked. Their patterns were clear. Their pride made them predictable. That was their weakness. And humanity was about to use it. Far out in the asteroid belt, hundreds of Terran stealth satellites had been sleeping silently for decades. They weren't like normal satellites. They were hunters, equipped with railguns, gravity disruptors, and stealth technology so advanced that even the alien sensors couldn't detect them. As the alien fleet crossed the invisible boundary line, those satellites came online one by one. Their systems hummed softly in the vacuum. Massive black guns rotated and locked onto their targets. The network was awake. The alien fleet didn't even notice. They were laughing at Earth's weak resistance. In their view, the humans had a few hidden warships, some orbital cannons, nothing that could stand against their endless wave. They thought Earth's last stand had already begun. But the humans weren't making a last stand. They were springing a perfect ambush. The first trap was a gravity well, a weapon buried in deep space, disguised as a dead asteroid. When the alien fleet's forward units crossed it, space itself twisted. The artificial singularity opened like a black mouth, dragging 3 alien cruisers into its pool before they even realized what was happening. The ships screamed across alien comms as they were crushed and torn apart by invisible hands. In the command room of the alien flagship, confusion and panic hit their officers. This wasn't a human attack. This was the battlefield itself turning against them. The second trap came moments later. A curtain of thousands of hidden Terran drones dropped their cloaking and appeared behind the alien fleet. They didn't make noise. They didn't shine. They were just dark shapes moving fast. In perfect formation, they flew between the enemy ships, sticking to their blind spots. Then they opened fire. Dozens of alien engines exploded at once. Ships that once looked unstoppable began to spin out of control, colliding into each other. It was chaos, silent, sharp, and deadly. Inside the alien flagship, their admiral barked furious orders. His voice boomed through the comm channels as he demanded to know where the human fleet was hiding. But his own officers were terrified. Their scanners showed nothing. There was no fleet in front of them. Only death coming from shadows. Their massive ships were not built to fight ghosts. Meanwhile, Earth's forces watched every move in real time. Deep in the control room, a young operator whispered, "They're in the net." The commander gave a single nod. "Close it." At that moment, dozens of hidden Terran warships uncloaked around the enemy, behind asteroids, beneath planetary shadows, inside orbital corridors. They had been waiting for the signal. Every Terran captain knew their role. The alien fleet was now trapped in a kill box, a perfect, invisible cage around their entire formation. Escape was impossible. The first coordinated strike hit the rear flank. 5 Terran heavy warships fired at once, their beams piercing through the engines of the alien carriers. One by one, the alien ships lost their ability to maneuver. They were huge, slow targets now. Then the second strike came from the front. Long-range Terran cannons launched kinetic slugs at near-light speed, punching through alien shields like they were paper. Each impact shattered hulls and tore ships in half. Alien communication lines filled with panic. They tried to form defensive positions, but their formation was already broken. Drones swarmed like a black cloud through their lines, cutting down anything that moved. Their capital ships fired blindly into the void, but they only hit their own vessels. Their confidence cracked like thin glass. Inside the alien flagship, the admiral slammed his fist against the table. His people had never faced an enemy that fought like this. In every war they had ever waged, their overwhelming size and power crushed resistance instantly. But Earth wasn't fighting like the others. Earth had built a battlefield that belonged to them. Every asteroid, every hidden station, every drone was part of the plan. The aliens weren't fighting an army. They were inside a machine designed to kill them. In orbit above Mars, another Terran strike group entered the battle. They launched a wave of shock missiles designed not to explode but to destabilize alien shields. The missiles moved so fast that most of the alien ships didn't even detect them. One by one, their shields flickered and died. The next wave of Terran beams cut through them without mercy. The alien fleet's central command began to fracture. Officers yelled conflicting orders. Entire wings of their ships started retreating without permission. Fear was spreading faster than their signals. They had come to crush Earth. Now they were being dismantled piece by piece like prey caught in a hunter's web. In the Terran command center, the air was thick but controlled. Officers moved quickly but without panic. Every movement was calculated. The commander watched the alien formation twist and tear apart like fabric. "They still think they're fighting us," he said quietly. "They haven't realized they're fighting the battlefield." His voice carried no pride, only cold precision. The alien admiral, desperate, ordered a full retreat of the vanguard. But it was too late. Behind them, the gravity wells were already active. Ahead of them, Terran warships had closed the trap. Their mighty armada had nowhere to run. From orbit to deep space, humanity's hidden power unfolded like a blade drawn from a scabbard. This wasn't a random battle. This was a hunt. The wolves had cornered their prey. The alien ships continued to explode one by one, their red lights vanishing into black silence. They had no idea how many human ships were out there. The truth was, the humans didn't need as many ships as the aliens. They only needed the perfect trap. The admiral of the alien fleet stared at the growing chaos around him. This was not what they promised their council. They had expected to land on Earth and crush it in a single day. Instead, they were losing ships faster than they could count. They were being outsmarted. And the most terrifying thing of all was that they still hadn't seen the full human fleet. On Earth, people watched as their screens filled with dots, red dots turning black. It was the enemy dying. For the first time, the world began to believe. They could win. Humanity could stand. In space, the net grew tighter. Human warships closed in silently, their engines cold, their weapons hot. The alien fleet was now trapped in their own arrogance. What they thought was their victory march was nothing more than a walk into a killing ground. The stars around Earth shimmered with fire. Alien ships broke apart and vanished. The trap had been sprung. And humanity was just getting started. The battlefield had changed completely. Only a short time ago, the alien fleet had advanced with unshakable confidence, certain that Earth would fall like every other world they had crushed. But now the void of space around the solar system belonged to humanity. The aliens no longer looked like hunters. They looked like prey bleeding out in the dark. Human warships moved like shadows, fast and silent. They didn't march forward with noise or glory. They surrounded their enemies like cold, sharp blades, and every strike was deliberate. The alien commanders tried to regain control. Their voices echoed through broken comm channels, giving desperate orders. But their formation was shattered. Their fleet was no longer a wall of power. It was scattered, uneven, confused. Every time they regrouped, something invisible struck from behind or above, and another ship exploded into glowing fragments. Their scanners showed nothing. Their radar was blind. Their shields were failing faster than they could repair. They were fighting an enemy they couldn't see, and that terrified them more than the losses themselves. High above the orbit of Jupiter, a small squadron of Terran Black-class warships drifted silently. These were ships built for one purpose: silent killing. Their hulls absorbed all light, making them almost invisible against the black of space. They didn't use normal engines or signals. They glided, powered by silent impulse drives that made them impossible to track. As they floated behind the alien fleet, their cannons began to glow with blue light. On the bridge of one of those ships, the captain gave a quiet signal. Not a shout, not a speech, just a single hand movement. And with that, the cannons fired. Beams of pure energy cut through the dark like invisible knives. They struck the rear of the alien fleet. 5 cruisers disintegrated instantly. No explosion. No warning. One moment they were there. The next they were burning wreckage spinning into the void. The alien ships tried to turn to face their attackers, but the Terran ships were already gone. This was not a normal war. The humans weren't fighting head-on. They were hunting. They attacked from every angle at once, small, sharp, and fast. The alien fleet fired blindly into the dark, lighting up empty space. It only made their fear worse. Their weapons were powerful, but useless against shadows that moved faster than their senses could follow. Across the battlefield, Terran drone swarms cut through alien formations like black rivers. Thousands of small, silent machines flew between enemy hulls, targeting engines, weapons, and shield generators. They didn't need to destroy the whole ship. They just crippled it, leaving it to drift helplessly. Then a Terran warship would finish the job with one clean shot. Inside the alien flagship, the Admiral watched in fury as the map on his screen filled with chaos. Red markers flashed everywhere. His officers screamed for clarity, but no one could give him answers. Their scanners were useless. Their ships were dying one by one, not from a grand battle, but from countless small, precise cuts. It was death by shadows. Meanwhile, deep underground on Earth, the Terran command center was calm. No shouting, no panic, just fast, clean coordination. The commander stood at the center of the room, his hands behind his back, his eyes locked on the tactical map. Blue dots, Terran ships, moved in smooth patterns, encircling the enemy like wolves tightening a circle. Red dots, alien ships, flickered and vanished as they were destroyed or disabled. The commander didn't celebrate. He simply gave the next order: increase pressure. Do not let them breathe. In orbit above Mars, another wave of stealth bombers launched. These weren't the heavy warships. These were fast, invisible, and lethal. They slid into the gaps between alien fleets, dropping charges that clung to enemy hulls like parasites. Seconds later, those charges detonated, not with light, but with electromagnetic bursts that fried entire ship systems. Alien cruisers went dark one after another, floating helplessly as Terran drones swarmed in to tear them apart. The alien admiral's rage turned to something colder: fear. For the first time in his life, he was facing an enemy that didn't give speeches, didn't roar with power, didn't meet force with force. Humanity didn't fight like an empire. Humanity fought like predators. Silent, calculated, ruthless. On the outer rim of the battlefield, a formation of alien ships tried to break through, hoping to escape and regroup. But as they rushed toward the edge of the trap, the stars seemed to twist in front of them. A wall of Terran dreadnoughts emerged from the shadows. These were the giants of Earth's fleet, heavily armored, carrying weapons powerful enough to shatter moons. Their arrival was slow and deliberate, like the closing of an iron door. The alien escape group fired everything they had. Beams, missiles, kinetic rounds, all of it. The dreadnoughts didn't even flinch. Their shields absorbed the blasts like water rolling off stone. Then the dreadnoughts responded with a single coordinated volley. One massive wave of fire ripped through the alien line. Dozens of ships vanished in seconds. No one escaped. The exit was closed. Back in the alien flagship, the crew could no longer hide their panic. Officers shouted over each other. Their sensors showed the Terran fleet as ghosts, appearing and disappearing too fast to target. It was like trying to fight the wind. The Admiral roared at them to hold the line, but the truth was already clear. They weren't holding anything. They were being pulled apart from the inside. Terran warships moved closer, still silent, still precise. They didn't need a grand fleet formation. They moved like hunters circling their prey. Their strikes were so clean that the battlefield had no echo, no long firefights, no messy explosions that lasted minutes. Just bright flashes followed by silence. Across the solar system, human forces worked together like a machine. Orbital stations locked their cannons on high-value targets. Drone fleets strangled alien mobility. Heavy warships smashed any attempts at retreat. It wasn't about numbers anymore. It was about control. And humanity had full control. The alien fleet, once proud and unstoppable, was now drowning in the shadows of a world they underestimated. They thought humans were weak because their planet looked peaceful. But what they didn't understand was that humanity had learned through centuries of pain. Every invasion, every war, every tragedy had forged them into something the galaxy was not ready for. The alien admiral stared at the main screen, watching as ship after ship disappeared from the map. His claws dug into the armrests of his chair. This wasn't supposed to happen. This was supposed to be their victory, their easy conquest. Now it felt like the galaxy itself had turned against them. In the Terran Command Center, the commander finally spoke. "They are beginning to understand," he said quietly. "But it's too late." Out in space, the Terran fleet tightened its circle. The aliens had nowhere left to run. Their arrogance was gone. Their roar had turned into silence. And humanity moved forward, not as prey, not as rebels, but as something the galaxy would soon fear. The shadows kept striking. One by one, the alien warships burned out and disappeared into the dark. The battlefield didn't belong to them anymore. It belonged to Earth. And Earth was done hiding. The last of the alien ships drifted in broken formation, like wounded animals surrounded by hunters. Their once perfect fleet, thousands of mighty warships, had been reduced to a burning graveyard scattered across the black sea of space. Engines flickered weakly. Communications failed. The surviving ships huddled close together, trying to form a last defensive circle. But even they knew it wasn't defense. It was fear. Their admirals had promised them glory and an easy conquest. Instead, they faced a silent enemy that had torn their armada apart piece by piece without ever giving them the chance to strike back properly. They were no longer the destroyers. They were the doomed. At the heart of the alien fleet, one massive flagship remained. It was larger than a city, armed with weapons powerful enough to shatter moons. Its armor was layered with black metal that had never been breached in any war before. It was the pride of their species, their symbol of dominance. Its commander, a hardened admiral who had crushed dozens of civilizations, stood on the command deck with a face that no longer showed arrogance but grim determination. He refused to accept defeat. "Aim the planetary cannon," he ordered. "If we fall, we'll take Earth with us." Technicians rushed to obey. Massive energy coils inside the ship began to spin. Glowing red light filled the bridge as power surged toward the main weapon. The alien flagship didn't plan to win anymore. It planned to burn everything. If Earth wouldn't kneel, the Admiral would scorch it out of existence. He believed this would be his final act of revenge. But far below, on Earth's surface, humanity was watching. Every satellite, every defense grid, every pair of eyes in the Terran Command Center locked onto the flagship. They all knew what was coming. And they were ready. In the silence of space, a shadow moved. It was bigger than anything the aliens had ever seen. The Terran dreadnought Nemesis emerged from the black, its colossal frame slowly blocking out the stars. It was not sleek. It was not elegant. It was a mountain of steel and fire, a warship built to end wars. Its black armor reflected no light. Its engines hummed like a sleeping beast ready to tear everything apart. For years, Nemesis had remained hidden beneath the oceans of Earth, never deployed, never revealed. It was humanity's final weapon. And now, for the first time, it rose to meet the enemy. On the alien flagship, warning alarms screamed across the bridge as the Terran dreadnought came into view. It dwarfed everything in the human fleet. The Admiral stared at it in disbelief. He had crushed fleets across half the galaxy, but he had never seen anything like this. His officers stammered in panic, trying to scan it. But their systems returned nothing. The dreadnought's hull swallowed every signal like a void. The Admiral clenched his fists. If they wanted a final fight, he would give it to them. Inside the Nemesis, the bridge was calm. No one shouted. No one panicked. Every soldier on board knew this was the moment history would remember. The captain gave a single nod to his crew. Weapons charged. Shields flared with blue fire. The dreadnought turned its colossal cannons toward the alien flagship. One last battle was about to begin. The alien flagship fired first. A crimson beam erupted from its main cannon, tearing through the dark, burning a path straight toward Earth. It was like a spear of pure destruction. But before it could reach the planet, the Nemesis moved in front of it like a wall. Its shields absorbed the blast. The sky lit up with a blinding wave of energy, but the dreadnought didn't even tremble. The beam that could destroy a world had been stopped cold. Across the galaxy, alien officers watching from distant command posts felt a chill run down their spines. Earth had just stared down their most powerful weapon and didn't even blink. Then it was humanity's turn. The dreadnought's main gun began to glow, a deep, terrifying blue. The energy gathered along the spine of the ship, humming like a storm waiting to break. Inside the alien flagship, panic erupted. Officers shouted warnings. Their scanners showed energy levels climbing to impossible numbers. "Fire," the Terran captain whispered. The dreadnought's cannon unleashed a single shot. It was not loud. It didn't shake space. It was quiet, precise, merciless. The beam ripped through the alien flagship's shields in less than a second. It didn't shatter the armor. It erased it. A hole the size of a city burned through the ship's core. For a brief moment, the flagship floated silently, its lights flickering. Then it split apart like a cracked shell. A blinding explosion filled the void, lighting up the battlefield brighter than any star. The pride of the alien fleet was gone. The surviving alien ships scattered in panic. Their discipline was gone. Their leaders were dead. They tried to flee in every direction, but there was nowhere to go. Human fleets were already waiting. Drones chased down retreating ships like predators hunting wounded prey. Small Terran frigates slipped behind the larger enemy vessels and struck their engines with clean, surgical blasts. One by one, the fleeing ships were destroyed or captured. In the Terran command center, the commander stood without moving, his hands clasped behind his back. He didn't cheer. No one did. Victory wasn't something to celebrate yet. It was something to finish. "Sweep the field," he said. "No threats remain." Across the solar system, the order echoed. Human ships fanned out, wiping away the last traces of the alien armada. Far out on the edge of the battlefield, a small alien cruiser tried to activate a warp drive to escape. But before it could, a single Terran interceptor appeared from behind an asteroid, locked on, and fired a missile straight into its engine core. The cruiser exploded, its last scream lost in the cold vacuum. There would be no survivors to warn their empire. Above the wreckage of their once mighty fleet, the Nemesis hovered silently, its hull gleaming faintly against the burning debris. It didn't need to chase or roar. Its presence alone was enough to crush any hope the enemy might have had. Inside the alien empire's distant command hubs, messages began to arrive, fragmented, broken transmissions filled with static, panic, and final screams. The greatest fleet they had ever assembled was gone. Their admiral was dead. Their flagship destroyed. Their invasion, the one meant to prove their dominance over the galaxy, had turned into their worst nightmare. Back on Earth, people poured into the streets, staring up at the night sky. They couldn't see the battle, but they could feel the shift. The fear that had gripped the world only hours ago had vanished, replaced by something colder, stronger. The realization that they had faced down the largest armada in history, and won. The Terran fleet moved through the wreckage like silent hunters. Fires burned in the distance where alien ships once floated. Broken hulls drifted, their red lights slowly dying. Humanity did not show mercy. Not after the threat of total destruction. This was not a war for territory. It was survival. The dreadnought Nemesis slowly turned its bow back toward Earth. Its guns powered down. Its shields dimmed. But its presence still hung over the battlefield like the shadow of a storm. Humanity had not only survived. It had shown the galaxy that no empire could break it. The alien fleet that came to crush Earth no longer existed. Their ashes floated silently through space. And in that silence, the galaxy learned a new truth. Earth bows to no one, that the battlefield had finally fallen quiet. The endless roars of explosions, the thunder of warship cannons, and the dying screams of enemy fleets were gone. All that remained was a vast ocean of wreckage drifting across the edge of the solar system. The stars shone faintly beyond the floating debris, as if the galaxy itself was holding its breath. The alien armada that once boasted of its invincibility no longer existed. What had arrived as a storm of fire now lay scattered and broken. Dust, metal, and silence. Humanity had won. But the victory was not just a military one. It was something far greater. It was a message to the galaxy. Inside the Terran Command Center, deep under the Earth's crust, the main screen flickered with the final reports. Every alien ship was accounted for. None had escaped. Hundreds were nothing more than glowing wrecks. The rest were cold, powerless hulls drifting aimlessly in the void. Operators worked silently, collecting data, securing coordinates, and locking down the last signals. No one celebrated. Not yet. The room carried the weight of what had just happened. Humanity hadn't just defended itself. They had erased the largest invasion fleet ever seen. The commander stood at the center of the room, hands behind his back, staring at the screen. He was not a man easily shaken, but even he felt the cold heaviness of the moment. Generals approached him with reports. Every defense grid had held. Every hidden station had fired exactly as planned. The trap had worked. For decades, humanity had prepared for this day in silence, waiting for the moment someone would come to burn their world. And when it came, they answered with something the galaxy didn't expect. Unmatched precision and cold, terrifying strength. Above the atmosphere, the Terran fleet moved in perfect formation. Warships patrolled the silent graveyard, scanning every piece of wreckage to make sure no threat remained. Drones moved between the debris like a swarm of black birds, collecting fragments of alien technology. Not out of fear, but out of strategy. Humanity wanted every piece of information. They wanted the galaxy to know. This wasn't the end. This was the beginning. In the dark, the colossal Terran dreadnought Nemesis drifted slowly, like a shadow of death hanging over the battlefield. Its massive frame still glowed faintly from the energy it had unleashed. The ship was quiet now, its weapons powered down, but its presence was enough to make anyone watching from afar understand one simple truth. Earth was no longer prey. It was power. Unshakable and unstoppable. Across the galaxy, distant listening posts and rival empires intercepted the fragments of the battle broadcast. Grainy footage of the alien flagship's destruction spread like wildfire across military networks and black channels. Alien commanders from faraway worlds stared at their screens in silence as they watched the moment the beam from Nemesis ripped through a ship that was supposed to be indestructible. Shockwaves moved through diplomatic chambers and council halls. No one had expected Earth to do this. Humanity had been underestimated for centuries, dismissed as stubborn, unpredictable, primitive. But now every empire knew the truth. They had made a mistake. Inside the alien empire's core systems, panic had already started to grow. The council that had ordered the invasion was in chaos. Transmission after transmission came in, each carrying only fragments of broken voices, static, and screams. No reinforcements. No retreat. No survivors. Their greatest fleet, the one meant to set an example, had been completely erased. It wasn't a battle. It was a slaughter. On Earth, the night sky was calm. Cities that had once gone dark in fear now lit up in bright light. People poured into the streets, looking up at the stars, knowing something extraordinary had happened. The fear that once gripped the world had vanished, replaced by a deep, quiet strength. Parents held their children close. Soldiers stood on rooftops, watching the heavens they had just defended. There were no parades, no fireworks, just a silent understanding. They had faced the galaxy's wrath and survived. In orbit, the surviving alien wrecks were being pulled into Terran control zones. Small recovery ships attached to the twisted remains of enemy vessels, towing them back to secure fields. Engineers and scientists were already preparing to tear them apart and learn everything they could. Every piece of alien metal, every line of code, every engine fragment would be studied. Humanity didn't just fight wars, they learned from them. And this war would make them stronger than ever. Inside the Terran Council chamber, world leaders gathered around a long table, the image of the destroyed alien fleet hovering above them like a frozen storm. No one argued. No one doubted. For the first time in history, The world stood united, not in fear, but in power. One leader spoke softly, almost whispering. "They came to crush us," she said. "And now they're gone." Another added, "They'll come again. But next time, it won't be us who's afraid." At the center of the battlefield, the dreadnought Nemesis activated its long-range communication array. The commander of the Terran fleet stepped forward. He had fought in silence the entire war, but now, for the first time, he would speak. His voice was calm, cold, and carried through the void to every listening ear across the stars. To the empires beyond, he said, "You sent your fleet to our home. You threatened our children. You thought we would bow. You thought we would burn. Instead, we erased your fleet from existence. This is your warning. Do not come for Earth again. If you do, you will not find a battlefield. You will find your graves." The transmission ended. The message echoed across the galaxy like a distant thunderstorm that no one could ignore. No shouting. No pride. Just the quiet, dangerous certainty of a species that had drawn its line in the stars. In the alien council halls far away, silence spread like a sickness. They had underestimated humanity, and now they feared the consequences. Empires that once laughed at Earth now whispered in the dark about the Terran dreadnought, about the fleet that came out of nowhere, about the trap that turned an Armada into ash. They whispered one word again and again: Earth. The Terran fleet slowly began its return. Warships descended toward their stations, disappearing beneath the oceans, into the shadows of the moon, and behind the silent asteroids where they had waited. Earth's defenses folded back into the darkness, invisible but very real. Humanity didn't need to show their power all the time. They just needed to remind the galaxy what would happen if anyone dared again. On the final approach, Nemesis entered Earth's orbit. The sun rose over the blue horizon, painting the massive warship in gold. It hovered silently, casting a long shadow over the clouds. For those watching from the ground, it was more than a machine. It was a symbol, a promise. Humanity would never kneel. Back in the command center, the commander finally allowed himself to breathe. The war was over. But he knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy now knew Earth's strength, and strength always draws attention. But humanity was ready. They had faced death and turned it into fire. Above the planet, the stars watched in silence. The wreckage of the alien fleet drifted like broken crowns around the world they tried to conquer. And at the center of it all, Earth stood untouched, stronger than ever, its voice echoing through the void. No empire would forget this day. No invader would come without fear. Humanity had carved its warning into the stars, not with words, but with fire. And the galaxy would remember.